I love the seasonal nature of food, and it inspires me to be creative in the kitchen. Welcome to Savoring Seasons, a series dedicated to the appreciation of seasonal produce. In each episode, I handpick a seasonal ingredient and feature it in a signature That House dish. Today, we're making orange sandwich cookies. Crumbly orange-scented shortbread filled with a delicious orange cream filling. Growing up in India, these cookies were a prominent feature of my school lunchboxes. Recreating this recipe today brings up so many lovely memories. So let's begin. The first step is to make the orange-scented shortbread. Now, this is a very simple recipe that I've adapted from one of my favorite recipe books, which is Patisserie at Home. It has a bunch of base recipes for anything pastry related, and it's my constant go-to. So let's make the shortbread. All the ingredients are weighed out, and of course, I'll leave the detailed measurements for you in a written recipe. Okay, we have some all-purpose flour here, and we're going to start by adding all of the dry ingredients. I have some icing sugar that I'm going to add in. Then I have some butter. This is fridge cold, and I've cubed it up. Then we're going to add some salt. Be generous. This really adds to the flavor of the pastry. Now I'm going to zest the oranges into this bowl. I have 2 oranges, and I'm going to use a microplane to get all the zest, which means all of those flavorful oils, into this pastry. It smells so beautiful. All of these oranges were generously given to us by a dear family friend. Now, you might want to get a microplane in order to zest any kind of citrus because it makes it so much easier and you don't get the white bitter parts of the pith. I'm zesting in 2 oranges for this recipe. You could use 1, but 2 just takes it to the next level, so I highly recommend. Now I'm going to rub the butter and all the other ingredients together to form a sand-like texture. So squeeze the butter cubes in between your fingers and then rub them with the flour. The only thing to keep in mind right now is you have to act quick before the butter melts. We don't want this mixture to get warm and we don't want the butter to melt. If you feel like the butter is getting too soft, take this entire bowl and put it in the fridge for a few minutes and then begin working with it again after the butter is cold. There are still some big chunks of butter. I don't want any chunks that are larger than a pea. So I'm gonna break up these chunks and mix them in with the flour and the other ingredients. Right, lovely. Now this is nicely mixed in. This is where I'd want it to be. The texture is kind of like wet sand. Now we're going to add the wet ingredients. So I'm going to crack in 1 egg into this mixture. And I'm also going to squeeze in some orange juice. About a tablespoon, and then let's see how much more we need. Now I'm going to bring the dough together using a spatula. We don't want to work this dough too much because we want the end result to be crumbly. So we're just going to stir this dough till it comes together. We don't want to overmix it. Okay, this needs a little bit more orange juice. There are some parts that are pretty dry. Very juicy oranges. Okay, this is pretty much there now. Okay, perfect. At this stage, I'm gonna dump it out on a work surface and just bring it together with my hands. Gonna softly, gently squeeze it together. This is not like kneading. This is just squeezing it lightly so all of the dry flour incorporates. Now, if you overwork the dough, what you'll end up with is a tough shortbread cookie, and we don't want that. We also have to work pretty quick at this stage because the butter is melting by the second. Now this is pretty much there. I don't want to work this anymore. And we're now going to cover this up in cling film and then put it in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours, and preferably overnight. This is a short crust pastry dough that I had made last night, so it's been chilling in the fridge for about 24 hours. There were some dry bits in this dough, and I can see that the flour has absorbed the moisture. So what we're gonna do now is flour our work surface lightly, and then we're going to roll this out and cut them out into cookies. Now remember, we don't want to add too much flour into this dough because it will change the composition of the dough and make your cookies less buttery. Let's begin. If it's getting too sticky, put it in the fridge, let the butter solidify, bring it back out and work with it. So we're going to have to work fast because we don't want to add too much flour and change the composition of the cookie. Let's do it. We're also going to flour our rolling pin. Flour the top of the surface as well, very lightly again. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is press this dough with the rolling pin just to flatten it out a little bit so it's easier to roll. And yes, we do want it to be this hard. We don't want it to be softer than this. All right, so now that I have flattened this dough, I'm going to start rolling. Okay, I've rolled it a little bit and I'm going to pick it up and turn it. Make sure the surface is still floured. We don't want it sticking. Apply even pressure to the center as well as to the edges. And we're looking to get this to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. Okay, again, I've rolled this for a few times. So I'm going to lift it up, make sure that there is flour here, and turn it around. Now these edges that are, breaking, cracking, that's totally fine. It doesn't matter. Just, pinch them together and we're all good. Okay, let's turn it one more time. Making sure there is flour underneath, flour on top, and flour on our rolling pin. So we're about 1/4 of an inch thick. So now we're going to start cutting out the shapes. Now we're going to cut them into biscuits. I dip the cutter into some flour so it doesn't stick. And try to get as close to the edge as possible. I love the flecks of orange that I can see in this dough, which is from the orange zest that we added. It also smells beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to put these cookies in the fridge for about 10 to 15 minutes because they're getting pretty soft. The butter is melting. And once the butter has hardened, I'm going to decorate these cookies and then we're going to bake them. These cookies have been resting for about 15 minutes in the fridge and they have hardened a little bit, which makes it easier for us to work with them. So this is an optional step, but I have this stamp, which, believe it or not, is an ice stamp that my husband Ross got me for my birthday, and it has my company's logo on it. So I'm going to attempt to brand these cookies with my logo and see if an ice stamp works on a cookie or not. I'm only going to stamp out half of these because the rest of the half are going to be the bottom of the sandwich cookie, so we don't need to decorate them. These are now going into the oven for about 20 minutes at 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure to check them every now and then to make sure they don't overcook or burn. It's been about 10 minutes. Let's turn the shortbread. All right, they look ready now. Let's get them out of the oven. These cookies have come out of the oven and they've been resting on the baking sheet for about 5 minutes. Now I'm going to transfer them to the wire rack and let them cool completely before we fill them. While the cookies are cooling, let's make the filling. Filling is really simple and just has a few ingredients that we're going to bring together in the bowl. Here I have some icing sugar and I'm going to sieve it into this bowl so that there are no lumps. Now this might seem unnecessary, but trust me, it makes a world of a difference. You could also use a spatula to let the icing sugar go in through the sieve quicker. Now we're going to zest one more orange into this bowl. So now we're going to add in the rest of the ingredients, whisk it all in, and our filling is ready. I have some soft unsalted butter here. So I've just taken it out of the fridge and left it at room temperature for a few hours. This is key. You will not be able to mix the butter and sugar if the butter is not soft. And now we're going to add in some orange juice. I have 1 orange here, so it's about 2 tablespoons of juice. We're going to squeeze in half an orange first, see where we're at, and then we'll add in more if we need it. Let's whisk all these ingredients together. Whisk it really well till all of the ingredients come together and there are no lumps. We're not going to need any more orange juice, so go slow because you can't take away the juice, but you can add more. Perfect, there are no lumps. And also note that this mixture will thicken as it sits because it has room temperature butter in here. So it'll harden a little bit. So this is not the final consistency. This is an optional step, but it makes my life a lot easier. I'm going to put this filling into a piping bag so it's easier for me to fill the cookies. We're on to the final stage of making these shortbread cookies and the most exciting stage if you ask me. There is one optional step that you don't have to do, but it just makes your cookies look that much better. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the same microplane that we used to zest the oranges to smoothen out the rough edges of the cookies. I'm gonna turn this cookie around and gently rub this microplane over the edge to get a smooth finish. Look at how much smoother this looks. These look beautiful now. And now we're going to fill these cookies. I have the filling here in a piping bag. I mean, you could just as easily do it with a tiny spoon, but this is a lot more convenient for me. Okay, I'm gonna try one. This totally reminds me of that flavor. So good. So orangey, so crumbly, so intensely flavorful. I love it. There we have it. Orange sandwich cookies ready. Try them at home and let me know what you think of the recipe. If you loved this recipe, you're going to love another one of my favorite snacks. That's a samosa. I'll link it for you here.